All right, ladies and gentlemen, I forgot to do the whole intro and everything else, so here we are, we're live, and I'm sitting in Lewis, so I'm going to let Zach carry most of the show here until I get home. We're just waiting for a prescription for one of the kiddos. So, anyways, I was not going to postpone this show anymore. Thank you for joining us on Jackrabbit Illustrated, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, as always. And thank you so much for our title sponsors, Kubota Dealers of South Dakota. We really appreciate you guys being with us with 10 locations across the great state of South Dakota. There's always a Kubota dealer near you to get into some high quality orange equipment with parts sales and service and more. Get yourself into some orange Kubota equipment today. As always, this was going to be a hot show, but this is an even hotter show, Borg, with everything that's happened for the Jacks as of the last 24 hours. Things have gotten crazy. I thought we were going to be going back over the semifinal game. I got a feeling that is going to be a footnote, afterthought, probably not brought up, because at this point it doesn't matter. It's kind of up to what's going on now and what's
Yeah.
next. So I'll
Well,
kick it
all
over to
those.
you for that.
Yeah, and Brendan, hopefully take your time and get everything you need, and see you back at your place in a little bit. So what did all happen yesterday? I'm not seeing any comments yet, by the way. So hopefully we'll see if anybody's online. But yeah, obviously a very interesting day. 24 hours in the college football world at SDSU and college football world in here in general. I definitely cannot really talk too much about the semifinals with South Dakota State, because I had all these notes I was going to say about, and a lot of it depended on, and there we got a comment there. A lot of it was going to depend on, hey, what's the future of this program going to look like? And, what some of the play calling and things look like for next year. And obviously we really don't know what that future is going to look like right now, because as it stands, Jimmy Rogers is the head coach at Washington State University. The smoke started yesterday in the morning. Obviously, the Griffin Wilde entering the transfer portal was kind of the first major thing that hit the fan, so to speak. A bit of a surprise, because I don't think a whole lot of people had that one coming. But, and then there'd been, I will say that I, along with a lot of other media people, had heard about this. We were trying to get confirmation. Couldn't really get anything throughout the day. And then obviously the national guys the national guys will break it whether they have a good source or not. So, but they were
Right.
correct. And, we knew this was coming. And it was shocking nonetheless. I think, we've talked on this post-game show podcast several times that I don't think anybody really thought Jimmy was going to be the next Stig and stay here for 20, 10, 15 years.
No.
But, maybe a little sooner than a lot of people thought. I was thinking, my personal thought was 4 to 5 years, and that's kind of been the timeline that a lot of NDSU, I'll compare this a lot to the NDSU thing, because that's really the only comparison we can make. This is a first of a kind thing here in South Dakota for Division I, because we've never had, obviously USD's had coaching changes, but they were nothing like this. This is a different beast. This is closer to what we've seen with, and UND. UND's changes haven't been anything like this either. This is closer to what NDSU has dealt with over the last, for the duration of their successful run. They've had to be the team that would replace the head coach, and obviously this is what SDSU has to deal with now. And this is what you're gonna, I think you said it yesterday in one of your tweets. This is the price of being successful. And I kind of did some dark humor with it, which I hope it didn't offend any Jackrabbit fans. I think you guys got the message pretty well that, basketball's kind of been through this. I did the James Franco first time meme with that one, because we've seen this with hoops. I mean, if I had a dime for every time the basketball program was going to be destitute by now, I'd be rich. So I realize these are different sports, but and even some people brought up too the fact wrestling has gone through this with when Bono left. So, but it's just a different deal. And with Jimmy especially, there should be a lot of hurt, because he had the ties. I mean, this is one of the dangers when you bring in an alumni, especially beloved alumni. If they win and they leave, then you're kind of, you're in this position when you tie up, But, it's still worth it. I mean, you had a good 2-year run with him. I thought it was going to be probably 4 to 5, but I don't think this would have felt any different in 2 more years or 3 more years. I think it would have felt the same way. I think you'd be dealing with the same things right now with, in terms of transfer portal. We might be losing X amount of guys, whatever. I mean, frankly, I always thought maybe Jimmy would be a coordinator again. Caleb, to your point with the assistant coaches, we don't know yet. Indications are, I think it's going to be the whole staff. I mean, we don't know exactly, but the indications are he's taking his whole staff and he's got freedom to take it. And I frankly wouldn't be shocked by that because there's no real success. This isn't like when Stig obviously left. I mean, there was the easy successor. You knew Jimmy was kind of always the heir apparent. And there were a couple other guys on that staff at the time who you thought, well, maybe even if Jimmy doesn't take it, there's a couple guys. There's nobody right now, I think. I mean, Danny Freund maybe, because I know he was the head coach in waiting at UND, but he hasn't really been here that long. There's no one internally on the staff right now that I think you would say, oh, you can promote him and make him the head coach tomorrow. So, for those guys, what would be the point of staying at this point? I mean, and some of them are alums. Obviously, Jesse Bobbitt's an alum as well. We're getting a pretty good. This is also. I love this too by the fact that we're getting kind of the play-by-play of you talking because we need to lighten the mood.
We need
a heavy 24 hours of stuff.
I've been
I don't lose my marbles trying to cough here, but this is good stuff.
That's never happened either. I've literally never had that happen before.
You got the kiddos with you, or you're by your flying solo?
Oh, I got my oldest with me. Say hi, Tay. Hi to all the JI people.
She looks thrilled.
Never been on. Yeah, she's pumped. She's mad because she wants some lunch. So we'll probably snack. We'll get a drive-through experience out of this as well.
Please don't get in a wreck, by the way, for this either.
Oh, I'm not going to be. I'm not. Up. You'll have to pull up. Tell me if my mic's terrible when I do this, but
it's all right now.
But
I thought last year's championship show was entertaining. This is pretty good.
I think that it's supposed to hurt, right? When you lose a coach like this, that means you cared. It means that he had an impact on the program. It tells you everything you need to know about how Jack fans felt about Jimmy, how much of an impact he had on this program. Just how important everything he's done for the last 20 years has been for the program. But and that leads to some anger too. When you really, really, when you love somebody and then they leave, that leads to a lot of feelings, right? A lot of anger, a lot of unhappiness, and that's understandable. I get it. But on the same side of things, this is life now as a SDSU fan. We've been protected by it for the last 27 years with Coach Stig.
And even more if you really count the fact that you had the same men's coach with Nagy. You still got Aaron Johnston. I mean, the whole athletic department was ridiculously spoiled for a long time. I mean, it's been just it's been a crazy thing. And somebody mentions Craig Bohl here, and I don't want to spill too many beans here because we're never going to know exactly how this all went down. Because when they hold the press conference in Pullman, they're going to say Jimmy was the guy from the get-go. I will say that there was a lot of shock that it wasn't Brent Vegan when I started calling people in that part of the country, and I do have some contacts up there. Certainly, we were kind of busy up there last year when USD hired the women's coach from Idaho. So, and we go, could use some blinkers, Always use your turn signals, folks. I can't emphasize that enough. But I mean, I know there were outlets up there that were tracking the plane flights of Brent Vegan, and he had been I think he'd been out to Pullman from Bozeman. So that was kind of the initial reaction, because when I started calling and asking people out there yesterday, well, what's going on? Have you heard anything about Jimmy Rogers? And they didn't really know what I was talking about. And everybody was like, well, we think it's going to be Brent Vigen. I don't know. I will say I think Vigen, and like I said, Jordan Fink here mentioning Craig Bohl and what happened in 2013. For those who don't remember, they were in the middle of their playoff run. He gets the Wyoming job. He didn't take the whole staff because Kleiman was on his staff. Kleiman was his defensive coordinator. And they promoted Kleiman. Vigen went with him, but it was a messy situation. I know Kolpak has a book. I think it's in Kolpak's book about what some of the details about it. I don't know the full story there, but it was bigger forehead. Yeah, it's still Peyton Manning. At least I have my hair, But it was messy. I know that. I think Bohl was actually recruiting for Wyoming as they were in the middle of their national championship run. So, I mean, it led to some hurt feelings. I mean, I think some of that some of that wasn't really smoothed over until this past year when he came back for the Hall of Fame ceremony up there. Obviously, he just retired at Wyoming. But I think some of that has had an impact on Vigen. I don't know this for certain. The one thing I've constantly heard, yeah, he tried. I think you're right. He tried to take the whole staff. Kleiman took the head coaching job. I don't think there's anyone with the current staff. There's no Kleiman on the current staff. I think if Jesse Bobbitt were a little older and had more experience, he would have been a guy who could have eventually slid into that role. But I think with Vigen, a lot of what I've heard, and I don't know this to be exactly true, he did not want to take another job before Montana State's season was over. And he's also being well paid. I've heard the figure that, I don't know that it's the figure. I've heard $600,000 is his figure at Montana State. I don't know if that's true. I think they have a little more in the bank up there to pay MSU and Montana coaches, but I don't know for certain. But I still don't think the pay is the issue there. I mean, he's going to make more at an FBS school, even if you have a good FCS school that pays well. I mean, Jimmy, I think the figure I've seen thrown around is $1.57 million a year, 1.6. He's going to be making somewhere in that vicinity. So that's still $1 million more than you were making if you're making $600,000 in Montana State in an FCS job. So if that's the top end of the FCS, that's still $1 million pay grade. And we know Vigen, I mean, he was up for the Fresno job. I mean, that allegedly Fresno, he might have waited too long on Fresno. Fresno might not have been willing to. A lot of people, it sounds like, just were not willing to wait on him. And I don't think he wanted to. I think that's part of it. I don't think after what happened with Bohl, I don't think he wanted to go through that situation where he left his team kind of out to dry as they were going for a national championship game. Yeah, it's not midnight. Rare thing. But, I mean, I think eventually Vigen is going to get into a major job. And he's also got a kid who's going to be playing on that team, too. And there have been all kinds of scenarios. I've seen the one that Jimmy was going to leave and be his defensive coordinator. That I can't say that that's entirely untrue. I've heard that one as well from credible people. So we're not going to really know how the whole thing went down. It was a very interesting. Like I said, Vigen is, unfortunately, Vigen. If Vigen takes the Washington State job right now, Jimmy Rogers could still be the SDSU head coach. And we're talking about a different scenario right now, but this is the timeline we are in, and we deal with it. So, yeah, I think at this point you have to expect most of the staff, if not all of it's going to be gone. We'll see what happens with the players. The rule is that when a coach leaves, you have 30 days from when the coach leaves to. You have 30 days from when the coach leaves to enter the portal and withdraw. So it's a special period, obviously, when there's a coaching change at a program. So also very key to remember, just because you go in the portal doesn't mean you can't come back out and rejoin your previous school. So I know a lot of Jackrabbit fans are going to freak out because there's probably going to be a lot of names going in the portal here over the next 24, 48, 72 hours. Some of them are going to leave. That's just inevitable. It's the way it is. I mean, a lot of them go to play for a coach, not necessarily the school. Others are different. And I've seen the reports that, sources say he's going to bring all these. I don't know if I believe he's going to be able to get 30 kids onto that roster. That seems a lot. I think he'll get a decent amount of transfers up there. But,
well, it doesn't necessarily have to all be transfers. It can be recruits and things like that, and
that's the other
overall, the total can end up like that. But the reality is, these are college kids, freshly out of high school kids. We're not going to know that until the dust settles. I know this. We don't know. Nobody knows yet. We don't know until the dust settles, till they get out. Because who knows? I mean, you get the right guy as head coach, you can have 30 guys in the portal, and then they all stay.
Well, look at it. Look at what happened with NDSU last year. They were all ready to jump away when Roll didn't get that job.
Yep.
And Polasek won them all back. They didn't really. Zabel, Miller,
exactly.
I know Wisniewski. I know he ended up leaving after the injuries, but those guys had big NIL offers that were on the table, and they came. Polasek won them over. That could easily happen. And I don't know that it'll happen with everybody. Like I said, I think at Griffin Wilde, it's hard to say with Griffin because he grew up wanting to be a Jackrabbit. I mean, I think you go to his Twitter page now, and it's still pinned the photo of him signing the photo, or the photo of him signing his letter, and something like "Dream Come True," So, but the other thing with him was he got a lot of late interest. He got a lot of late interest in the process from some major schools. Like SDSU signed him early and got on him early, and then he kind of broke out at Jefferson. And I know there were some pretty big schools coming after him. He stayed true to the SDSU staff, and he signed. And he's had a great 2-year run. But, he's got – I've said this for a while. I think he's got NFL talent. And, if he feels like he needs to go somewhere else, that's what you get. I mean, you say best of luck and thank you. That's all you can really do.
Here's something else people have to remember here. It's not just the kid who this money matters to sometimes.
Parents,
Figure out how to turn. You're not pulling a trailer. Anyway, you're going to get some road rage today, and everyone gets to be a part of that rodeo with me. I'm not eating while I'm doing a podcast today.
This is probably a PSA for distracted driving.
This is no, because I'm not looking at you guys. This is still hands-free. This is basically a phone call.
True.
But people need to remember, there's been players on SDSU's roster through the cost of attendance and stuff have gotten some cash, and we're sending it home to their families because their families need it. Yep. Not everybody's coming from a well-off situation, and I'm going to be real harsh real quick. If you are sitting there acting holier than thou because someone transferred for money, you need to shut your fucking mouth, because you don't know what that family's situation is. He could be paying for his next sibling's tuition for all you know. You don't know. You don't know what their scenario is. It's the reality of today's world is kids get paid, and you don't know what the scenario is for those kids. So I think that's something that's forgot a lot when this is talked about the devil of the portal and NIL and all this stuff. There are kids out there who are helping support families with this money, who are in low income situations and things like that, where they can provide groceries and things like that for families that you don't know about. So everybody's got this high horse about it, and that is something that's never brought up that I do think should be mentioned. Not everybody comes from a great situation or a well-off family and things, and that needs to be kept in mind sometimes when it comes to this stuff.
And believe me, I'm there. contrary to popular belief, the journalism industry does not exactly pay the highest. So, if ESPN comes and offers me $3 million, I'm out of here. I don't ever anticipate that happening because I'm not actively applying anywhere. But, that's so. Yeah, I mean, I've had that discussion with people who are upset about that, and I'm like, and the other thing is too, all these guys are not going to be professional athletes. Not a lot of many of these guys will not have a shot at the NFL. I know I was going back and forth with somebody like saying like, oh, didn't you see what Tucker and Dallas did? Tucker Kraft, Dallas Goddard, and Mason. I'm like, well, yeah, but let's remember Jake Winicki had one of the best careers I've ever seen. I think he only got a minicamp shot with the Vikings. He couldn't get drafted. And his numbers were comparable to Cooper Kupp. Right. So I don't think I don't think he regrets any of that. I don't know if he would have transferred if he had the means. And he had a pretty good run in the CFL. But there's no guarantee that you're going to, so the other half of it is too with the money aspect, like you said, that everybody's situations are different. This may be your only shot to get any money. I had somebody else putting it like, and I put it this way because this was before Jimmy left, ironically. I didn't know it was going to end up literally coming back around the next day. There's that clip of Jim Larinaga, the former Miami Florida men's basketball coach. And he just stepped down and he kind of burned out. And he makes a comment, and I'm a little verbatim here. And he's like, I'm just so burned out because of the free agency. 8 of my players after the Final Four said they were leaving and they want more money. And what does this become? This has become professional. I'm like, well, dude, you left George Mason for more money and a better opportunity. How can you? And somebody shot back. I mean, it's like, well, there's a difference between trying to get a better job opportunity, a promotion, if you will. And I'm like, I understand that, but in a way, that's what these kids are doing because most of them are never going to get professional chances. Most of them are going to never make NFL money. This may be their chance to earn decent money playing a sport. And again, to the situations you said as well.
But all that being said, what Johnny Van says here,
I know he's cutting out a little bit. I think he says just because
you're getting to be on another roster, there is a potential you ruin your future doing that, and you go from having your scholarship paid for to paying for your own way in college. Mm-hmm. And that's the other side of this coin, where there's going to be a huge number, thousands, who don't end up playing football in college anymore.
Well, and
because they jumped in the portal.
Somebody asked me just before this how many are in the portal right now. I don't have any. We don't actually, I think unless you're an NCAA athlete or administrator, you don't get actual access to the portal, though I know there are people who can probably cheat and find a way in. But the number I saw was that between 2023-24, during that offseason and into the season period, at all divisions, 11,000 people went in the portal. 11,000 people didn't get another job. 11,000 people didn't get another scholarship. 11,000, it was a very small. I think I want to say 33%, but that might be too high. So, and there's also a point too that you also got to get an education out of this, guys. I mean, not all of you are going to play pro football. Very few of you will, and even those who do go on may not make a whole bunch of money unless you're a superstar. So, yeah, I mean, that's something I said yesterday, again, before all the Jimmy stuff really hit the fan. I said this for my thing with anybody who goes in the portal is you better make sure there's an opportunity for you out there. And, you hope it's a good – and make sure it's a good fit because it's not just that there's an opportunity. I mean, look at – I'll use a story again from NDSU. Look at Eli Green, the receiver they had who was their number one guy a year ago, or he was trending toward it anyway. Went to Iowa State. I think he only had one catch this year. I think it was in the UND game. Like, he kind of got buried on that team. If he stays at NDSU, granted Bryce Lance and some other guys had emerged, but he stays at NDSU, he's going to get a lot of opportunity because he would have been the number one receiver. He probably, who knows if Bryce Lance has the season he has if Eli Green is still there. So it's not just about knowing that there's an opportunity. It's like, okay, you're going to go somewhere, they're going to tell you all this nice stuff, but I think that's some of the reason maybe Mark, who ironically we've also heard now is going to be in the portal, which that's no shock, folks. He was going to either go to the pros or potentially play another year elsewhere. Gronowski said this was his last year regardless. So that to me does not count as the exodus. He was gone anyway. But, Gronowski, I think that was part of the calculus for him returning is, well, was it really making that much sense for me a year ago to go somewhere else completely new where I don't necessarily have a guaranteed spot? Maybe he didn't. I mean, I think the money would have been there for him in places, but those are the things you have to weigh when you're getting in the portal. Now, some of the guys like Wildy, or I use another one with USD, Mike Grace, who obviously was the Defensive Player of the Year. I don't think there was he was from Florida. I kind of had a feeling he would probably go in after the season he had. Those guys, you kind of have a feeling they're going to have a spot somewhere because they're just that good, and they have pro potentially. To those guys, I kind of say, my thing with them is just shoot your shot. At that point is, you got to find your fit. But man, if you got an opportunity to go somewhere big, live your life and have a great experience. My thing there. But obviously, it comes down. Obviously, money comes into it. If you have an assistant coach.
If I was a athlete today, if I didn't know, because we know tampering is rampant, unchecked, and doesn't matter. If you don't know where you're going to go when you transfer, you better not transfer. I don't care if you are Marquise Grace. If you don't know where you're going to go or have it locked in, don't jump in the portal because you don't.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of really good guys jump in the portal, and then you end up where? You think it's someone who's going to go somewhere big, and then they end up at, Miami of Ohio at best, or, McNeese State or something, where it's like, well, that wasn't an upgrade.
And like I said,
what are you doing?
And like I said, Wildy, Grace, they're going to have their spot. If anything, they've probably already been getting contacted because, as you said, the tampering thing is everybody kind of knows it's happening. But, my point is, if you got like the one thing I always I hated it in basketball. It's a little different in football, but I'm like, just don't go down the road to Nebraska or Iowa because, it's right down the road and I always want to be a Hawkeye or like, you know what? If Alabama were coming after Griffin Wildy and offering him a good money, saying, hey, I want to go to Alabama. I want to have again, I realize there's other considerations and you want to go somewhere where you can play, but like, man, if I had an opportunity to go somewhere where A, they've developed pros, and B, it's just a different kind of experience, a once in a lifetime thing, do that. Don't just settle for the regional glory but like I said, I think with some of these guys, it's also going to come down to, I've said this with Gronowski. A lot of people are already saying, he's going to go to Wazoo. That's possible, but I could see him just as easily going to Northwestern because I looked at their depth chart, and it ain't any better than it was a year ago. I mean, their quarterback situation might be worse than it was a year ago, and that's saying something. So,
and
Lujan's still there for now.
Well, let's be honest. Family's very important to Mark, and with his brother and everything else, and being able to see it. I don't know if
it'd be tougher to do at home than Washington.
Yeah, whereas you have the Badgers right there, you have Iowa right there, Northwestern right there, Illinois right there, Indiana not that far away. I mean,
and most of those teams need a quarterback.
Yeah, Michigan State right there. There's a lot of opportunity closer than Pullman that have a lot more money than Washington State does. You don't want to compare checkbooks of Wisconsin versus Washington State. It's not close. And Wisconsin's not exactly a big swinger in the Big Ten.
Yeah, so nothing will surprise me, and I still think I don't know. I'm not going to pretend I know him super well. I got a chance to talk to him privately last Saturday at the Fargo Dome after, which I'm thankful for. I got a chance to talk to him privately. I got a chance to briefly talk to Jimmy privately. I'm not going to share what I said, but just other than just thank yous for letting us do our job. And with Mark, my son, who is currently doing something above me, I can hear him pounding something on the ceiling. But I just with Mark, it's just I still get the sense, I don't know him well enough, I get the sense he still really wants to go pro, and he would prefer to be done with college, because as fun as it still is college, and you do want to move on at some point. Although I say that, and Aiden Bauman's coming back for another year, so you never know what these guys are going through these guys' heads. And of course, he's going to get a good bag of money if he goes somewhere. But I still get the sense if he hears what he wants, and he feels like he's going to get drafted, even if it's not the highest round, I still think he will go pro. But it's no secret that I don't think this was exactly the season he wanted to have statistically. He certainly got off to kind of a rough start. Certainly as they adjusted to new personnel. So if he feels like he needs another year to build his case, and then obviously competing at a higher level, which would certainly be the Big Ten, he'll do it. So, and again, I think nothing that we said a year ago after they won the national title is different now with Gronowski. He's done everything he needed to do for SDSU.
Yep.
He'll have you could practically build him a statue if you wanted. You could maybe even retire the number. They don't really do that in college anymore, but he's done everything that, do they have a ring of, they don't have like a ring of honor, do they? I mean, like some schools do. I know CSU, we have a couple names that are retired. I think the jerseys are retired, but it'll be a while, I think, before that kind of honor is bestowed. And I'm sure I'm sure Jim Langer probably deserves it first above anybody, but
right. Well, there'd be a whole mess of names that'd have to be added, but
yeah. Well, you can only retire so many numbers before you start to run out of numbers. But
right.
Yeah, again, nothing's changed with Mark. He's done everything there is to do. No Jackrabbit fan. Nobody should be upset if he transfers. Wish him the best and root for him, and if it's to Washington State, Pullman, wherever. But like I said, my gut is he wants to go pro, but we'll see what happens. That's he's still going to play that. I think it's the Shrine Bowl, or so it's the rest of the team that's going to be the interesting part. Something I would have said before all this, I was prepared to, is I feel very confident with this team if Chase Mason is back as the quarterback. And I said that a year ago. Like, I do believe Chase Mason is ready to lead this team. I don't know if he's going to be leading this team right now. And I don't want to speculate. I don't want to speculate on here about who could be going, who could be coming. That's not fair to anybody, and there's no way to know. I mean, they could all put their name in the portal and then come right back. It's going to largely depend on who SDSU hires. This is not abnormal. And, I'll say this, obviously I think Bison, I know there's some Bison fans snickering. You guys have been through this too, and we all knew this was going to happen to SDSU eventually, both with the portal and with probably a head coaching change like this. And Coyote fans, it's going to happen to you too one day if you guys want to stay successful and be successful. I mean, Nielsen will retire, but I would assume eventually their next guy will be, they'll have a young guy eventually. I would assume it's going to be Travis Johansson if they had their way. Gonna have, if you want to be successful, this is the price of business. So, if I were anybody else in the FCS, I would be taking notes right now on what is happening. And if, it's, rather than, I understand, the rivalry part of it, you can everybody snickers a little bit when their rival is maybe having a bit of a rough time, even if they don't want to admit it. But at the same time, be taking some notes, because know that it's going to happen to you eventually. This is the price of business. If you want to be elite, if you want to be a championship program, and as we've seen with basketball in this state, whether it's the men, the women, when these programs get good, the big boys come calling, and they come for the coaches. Tyler, yeah, I guess that's the next thing we can probably start talking. I will say one thing that's going to have to improve, and I think we've already seen some steps, is it's going to have to be probably the collective and the NIL stuff. That I will confess I did not know that there had been so many issues with the, I think it was the 605 collective. That's not exactly something I follow on a daily basis. I know I saw that Ryan McKnight and JFPA are saying they're going to be taking that over, and we should know some more stuff in the new year. Those are important things nowadays. You have to have a collective going. I mean, it's not going to entirely stop. Just to be clear, I mean, there's no FCS collective that can match a major FBS program. That's not going to happen. But it's one of those things where, to your point, like you said, like you were saying with guys who are moving on for money, some guys just need it as help with family, with living expenses, whatever. Sometimes that's all guys want is just that little extra help, and they'll stay. Not everybody's going to get the big mega deal that maybe a Griffin Wilde or a Gronowski could get. What a collective at this level is going to do is just take care of some things on the side. Take care of just basically, it could just be living expenses, just things like that, which to us seem trivial. But if remember when you were a college student, if you were going through it poor, how much would you have liked these things? So those are things that are going to have to, and we'll see where we'll see. We'll also see where the SDSU investment is too, because the next coach, you're going to have to improve whatever Jimmy was making. I think I've seen the number 310 was the base. I've seen. You're going to have to up it.
Well, I want to put out on that. I want to put out on that with what Jimmy was making. Jimmy made $310,000. From what I have been told, he made almost $500,000 after bonuses when he won the national title.
I was going to say bonuses, incentives, yeah. And I'm sure he's making more at Washington State because there'll be bonuses and incentives there too.
Well, he's making way more up there. Yeah, obviously. Yeah. Not to try to claim that it's what Washington State's paying. It's more to just put out there that it wasn't 310 and that's it.
Right. That was just the base. That's just the base. Everybody's going to have incentives. There's media deals. There's all kinds of stuff. And, but either way, you will have to bump up the base pay. That's kind of an inevitable thing anymore. I mean, you have to, when one coach leaves, if you're successful, you have to pay the next guy a little more to keep making the job. I mean, that's probably, and again, it's not all, I hate to make it sound like it's all money. And that's going to be a factor too, by the way, because we talk about all these ex-SDSU guys who are maybe coordinators now. They are making a lot more money as coordinators in some of these places. I don't know what Zach Lujan's salary is. He might be making $1 million a year, I would think, as a Big Ten coordinator. So, I mean, some of that probably depends on your age and experience levels. But, it's not necessarily a given that these guys are going to be able to, stay in a role. It's not necessarily a given these guys are just going to want to come here and be head coaches because they're getting paid well. But if you want to be a head coach, you have to start somewhere. So, it's going to depend. Is it money? Is it the title? Starting a career as a head coach? Everybody's got their own priorities. So, but, to assume it's going to be all about money or all about the title is wrong. It's going to be the right fit. And wasn't that long ago Sting was making less than 200. Wasn't that long ago this program was playing at Coughlin Alumni Stadium, and there were trees and this program has come a long way. That's why I said this to people last. It's going to be a tough couple days if you're a Jackrabbit fan. This period now sucks, and you should feel all that. You should get that all out. I mean, with everything Jimmy did for this program, you should. That's fine. That's normal. But, this program is in such a better place than it was even when I started here 10 years ago. The facilities, the investment, there needs to be more investment. I mean, that's just inevitable. It's an arms race that never stops. And you're gonna, the NIL thing has got to be shored up. But, the people who are saying, oh, this program's, it's over, it's done. They're going to go back to being, the also ran they were in Division II or worse. No, I mean, you got to be. There are only so many programs that have the facilities and investment that they do at the FCS level, period, that they're not going to just fall off the map unless somebody unless the athletic department just decides to let the bottom fall out. And I've seen no indication that's ever going to happen anytime soon. And again, we talked about the FCS not exactly being the strongest it's ever been. It was very top heavy this year. I mean, there were 4 clear teams at the top. I would say UC Davis was a 5. They could have gotten there as well, but right now the power has been in the Dakotas and Montanas. Those are where there's the most investment, the most facilities. There's no reason for me to see that changing just because a coach left. Other programs, other places, yeah, I think it's a little different. And, it might take us, we'll see. Maybe SDSU is not contending for the national title this year. I still think they could, whatever happens, just because, oh, by the way, they're going to lose people, but this is still going to be an attractive place for pretty good players to come to. And as we've seen with the history of this program, they've developed guys who didn't have big pedigree or big or a bunch of, or they took chances on guys. I mean, Kraft, Goddard, McCormick, they weren't getting recruited by anybody. Christian Roseboom, his only offer was a legacy offer from Northwestern College in Orange City, not the one in Evanston, Illinois. So, those guys are the ones that make your program or break your program. If you can develop those guys along with whatever you're bringing in, you're smooth sailing from there. And I think SDSU's always got a chance to do that. What might criteria look like for the next hire? I mean, that's the $1 million question. I think first and foremost, whoever it is going to have to be pretty tight with Stig. I say that in a good way. I say that I'm not saying they have to be an ex-assistant. I'm not saying they have to be someone who's worked with him. It's just they're going to have to be someone who has a good relationship with him because he's the godfather. I mean, he's the one who kind of established, I've seen the things about Jimmy being the great culture builder, and he certainly built a great culture here, but we know Stig is the one who kind of built this thing from the ground up, literally. And I think whoever comes in here, you're going to have to, Brian, you're not lying. That could be a possibility. Stig has said he's missed it. It's a stopgap, but that's a lot to ask a guy who's retired, and especially having to build a staff from scratch right now. I think that would be a lot. But anything's on the table. You never know. But I think whoever comes in here needs to have a good relation, needs to have or build a good relationship with John Stiegelmeier, because that's, as long as he's around, he's the bedrock, and he's the guy you're going to have to lean on because, this job in the Dakotas, the job here, the job in Vermilion, they're unique because you're not in the large towns. You're in 2 of the smaller towns in Division I. I've said this whenever we hit the attendance discussions. It's like, well, it's one thing when Fargo has 250,000, Bozeman has 50,000. I think Missoula's now up to 100. They have bigger areas to draw from. You don't have that here. There's advantages and there's drawbacks to that, but you have whoever's coming here has to know what, you need to know what you're getting into. It's not going to be the easiest job, but you do have a lot of things that you can play to. And a big one is John Stiegelmeier. He is going to be a guy who can be your best friend, and I think a guy who you lean on if things are going rough. But, you have to have his support because he is kind of the ambassador and everything. But beyond that, I think they're going to look for somebody, it could be anything. I think you want somebody who has some ties, maybe to the FBS, who can work the transfer portal a little bit. Ties to the program help. I don't think they're essential, but and now we got you back in the studio. Goodness,
I'm back. I'm back.
What was it, Culver's, by the way? Was it Culver's?
It was not Culver's. We don't need to speak about where it was. No,
that's an upset, man.
I know I'm in a rush, and it was right across the street from Lewis. So I just
and you had a young child as well.
I got a 12-year-old with, and that's her favoriteest in the world. So yeah.
By the way, did you know there's actually a movie produced by Culver's about a farmer trying to save? I saw it like that was
save his It's the most Wisconsin movie on the planet. He's trying to save his farm, and the bank
Craig T.
lets
Nelson
him
who was
bet.
coach. It's Craig
Yeah.
T. Nelson who, for my generation, I guess not really my generation. I remember him from. Some people remember him from Poltergeist. I remember him from Coach. I mean, that was a great old series back in the day. I'm surprised they never called. I'm still disappointed Minnesota State Mankato doesn't call themselves the Screaming Eagles, not the Mavericks. But, yeah, I mean, so I just, sorry to go on a tangent there, but I now when I see Culver's, I think they produced a movie in Wisconsin with Coach. So, anyway, no, I think we've kind of gone on some things. I mean, obviously, you probably.
I was listening the whole time.
Turn it over to you. Your thoughts.
Yeah, when it comes to Stig coming back, Kevin asked at what point do you not let the coach who once removed run your football program? I think the point you hit that would be is if you struggled having people who are interested in the program who are new and not of the caliber that you need. As it sits, from my understanding, is almost everyone in the FCS is interested in having this job. This is not a small, everybody wants this job. I don't think it is quite grasped how desirable this job is seen in the FCS, because one of the things, there's the negative losing the coach and having the turnover and everything else. But when you have a coach after 2 years, and granted, Washington State isn't a P4 school anymore, but they are a high-end G5. So to be able to jump into that after just 2 years at this program, and you're set up for success already when you jump in, I mean, that is incredibly healthy, and it builds on itself for a program where good coaches want to coach there because they can see that it's going to advance their careers. You don't want someone who's going to stay forever in reality, because someone who's going to stay forever is someone who's not doing well enough to get offered the amount of money that makes someone leave. So it's crazy. Like Brian says, it's top 4 job, 100% argument for top 2, depending how you look at it.
There'll be a decent amount of FBS guys, I think, interested too.
Yeah. You can make the argument that outside of pay, this is better than some G5 jobs.
Absolutely. I mean, especially some of the Conference USA jobs. That I have no doubt about.
Yeah, you can't look me in the eye and tell me Kennesaw State's a better job than here. Or pick some beat into the dirt MAC program, Eastern Michigan or something, where you have to work a miracle. And yeah, if you do turn that program around, you're getting a huge job because they're awful. But this is better. Where you're successful, you can move up. That's what you want your program to be realistically, because as we've talked at length, Coach Stig is a unicorn. They don't happen. And it was a unique set of circumstances there as well. And I'm not saying Stig would have left had he had, the end of his career at the beginning of his career. But when you're a D2 team that's 7-4, you're not getting nearly the attention on your coach and your coaching staff as you do when you are an FCS team that is, not, winning national titles, going to the semifinals and things like that. And I do have another comment off and aside for USD fans who are touching themselves to this news. You haven't proven shit yet as a program. Honestly, if you want to talk, there's a lot of, this is the end of SDSU's program. That's fine. You can believe that, but it's wrong. This is a program that's gone to 6 of the last 7 semifinals. They've been in the playoffs, I think, 13 years straight. They have the 5th most national titles in FCS history. They have more wins against North Dakota State than anybody in the country by threefold over the last decade. They're the only team to beat NDSU in Frisco. They've got the second longest streak of weeks into top 25 in FCS history, I believe, behind obviously NDSU. This is not like a program that's just going to collapse. If this happened to USD after one good year, you've got to repeat it now. Like this year, this is your pinnacle. It has to be every year to be considered in that realm with Montana State, South Dakota State, North Dakota State. That's just reality. And the guy who showed up and all of a sudden turned around is gone to New Mexico State. I mean, there's a clear line there. Yeah, Fresno. Sorry, Fresno.
A little bit better than New Mexico State.
Did he go to Fresno? Oh, I thought he went with X. So my bad.
Yeah. Josh went to went with Eds, who's now also with Nick Benedetto. Okay. Another one too. Which by the way, felt like Vegan was going to get that job, and maybe Matt Ince and maybe Josh Davis is still at USD. Although I think he might have moved on anyway, but to an FBS job, but. Maybe Josh Davis is still at USD if Vegan takes the Fresno job. I mean, this is like this 6 degrees of separation with Vegan, or what is it, the Kevin Bacon thing.
So Dustin says this, he's obviously an NDSU fan using this in a derogatory way. They have two. Not sure I would use that as a selling point. 5th most in the FCS ever. That's not just better than the current number of FCS teams. At 100 and God damn it, why am I farting out on number? Well over 100 other programs in the country. That includes teams that have left. So you're well over 140 programs that were FCS.
Jalen Lee. I see Jalen Lee. Is Jalen Lee a former or current player? I can't remember.
What? Where are you seeing?
I see Jalen Lee has a comment says there will be zero fall off.
Oh, yeah. He, I think he's, oh God, no, I'm having a brain fart. I'm sorry, Jalen. I think, God, no, I'm having a brain fart.
I tend to agree with him. Well, I mean, look, I'll play the neutral part in this because obviously I'm the journalist guy and I have to be neutral and I work with both I have to work inside both. I get the USD fan sentiment, and I've said this is going to come for you if you really want to be this good. Your time's going to come if this thing keeps building and you guys get to this level. This is natural. I've seen, there are going to be. I think the good fans know not to revel too much in somebody. He transferred. Okay, well, I don't know. There's so many guys anymore that come and go. I'm losing track. I couldn't keep Diamond Evans and Seven Wilson's positions straight last night. There actually are 2 Jalen Lees. I remember that. Yeah. And one, yeah, if that's the current Jalen Lee, if he's still on the roster and coming back next year, that's the attitude you want to hear for sure. But even then, I'm sure
this is why my life's confusing. I only have 3 brain cells, and 2 of them are active, trying to just make me be able to walk and breathe at the same time. So.
Look, Jack, to the fans out there, don't mind, there's good fans for every fan base, and the other 75 to 80 are knuckleheads. I think, like I said, I know there's the NDSU fans. I've heard the NDSU and USD portion of that saying, well, it's over for you guys now. I think the level-headed ones, the ones who know what's up at NDSU and USD, those fans who aren't the knuckleheads, they know, I think, that SDSU is going to come out of this okay. There might be some bumps. It might, we'll see what it looks like. But I think the majority of fans who think with a level head and all those fan bases know SDSU is in a much better place for a coaching change than it was, say, 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. And, but the fans are going to fan. Anytime your rival loses somebody or goes through a moment like this, there's always going to be that section that rebels in it. It'll flip the other way too. Obviously there were Jackrabbit fans who enjoy. We know there were Jackrabbit fans who enjoyed the Bison.
Yes, I was just going to say, let's not act like SDSU fans are clean of this. When somebody transferred or coach leaves or whatever. SDSU fans do the same shit. I'm not saying we're clean or better or anything else. It's the same thing.
This is common.
It's the same thing, and that's why I said because
you hate each other. You hate it. It's okay to maybe play off one thing from those semifinals. It's okay to admit you hate each other. It doesn't have to be all respect and hugs and kisses. You can genuinely hate each other and admit it.
Well, let's be honest here with the amount of focus that semifinal had well after it's done. The marker game is on a fast track to brawl the wall-esque between the fan bases, which is something I called. You can ask Matt Frazee. He's patted me on the back, and I appreciate him for it. And by the way, SDSU football Twitter, unblock him. He's not the guy. And Patrick, if you're listening and you think that Matt Frazee's a troll, please quit Twitter. It's just being dumb. But it's okay. It's okay to admit the hate's there. It started very respectfully, and that's good. And there's respect between the administrations, which you want. It's okay for the fan bases to admit they hate each other.
It's okay for the players to admit it. I'm sorry. I mean, it is. I mean,
the only thing I find funny about Cam waiting until after the semifinal game to say that is absolutely just reeks of him saying, "Oh, I can say it now," reeks of I don't have to face the consequences next year or the following years for saying this. When you wait until you don't have to play him again to go, "I hate you." That makes me laugh. That makes me laugh a little bit.
That's certainly part of it, and it would have been more fun if he had come back another year having said that. But it's not just the consequences of what he would face from SDSU. I'm sure his own people, I'm sure Polisek, the NDSU administration, everybody was saying you cannot pop off about them until you're done. I mean, it's not just those administrations, those schools. I know SDSU. I know when Tucker Kraft and Sanders put the horns down thing right after the Montana State. Yeah. I know that didn't exactly make them comfortable. They couldn't stop it, and they kind of have let their guys, they kind of let their peacocks fly. But if they had their choice, they would have said, hell no, don't do that stuff. And NDSU, I think, is a little more buttoned up in that regard. They've always kind of run themselves a little like I always kind of make the analogy like we saw if you saw the movie based on the Miracle on Ice, where they're watching the film of the Russians playing hockey, and one of the U.S. guys is like, "Do these guys ever smile?" And one of the U.S. guys says, "They're Russians. They get shot if they smile." It's like that's kind of what NDSU has always felt like. It's just a very but
they're very
point being, most of these schools don't want any incendiary stuff put out there. And I think that was part of what Cam said too. Like you said, he's not going to have to face SDSU again, but I think he also knew that he didn't have to worry about his own administration and his own coaches coming down on him for saying something for the future, because he's not going to have to deal with it. So,
and I think that's mostly what it was. Him saying, "I can say it now," is, well, the coach is going to be mad, but
and to be fair, he was still pretty heated about it in the post game. I was at the press conference, and I know this is mostly gone out now, and it got out, but he was still. He said, he's like, I thought we had respect for them, but people also got to remember too, this is right after a rather large game, very close game, heated emotions. I've said this multiple times. I will say this again. If anyone believes Adam Bach was trying to injure him or had malicious intent, it was his ex-high school teammate. And Adam Bach has had a number of serious injuries that almost cost him full seasons. That's the last guy who's trying to cheap shot people or end somebody's season/career. So, that narrative is stupid. That sideline, I was on that sideline. It was a late hit, but it's also a sideline play. I mean, some of that times your momentum's taking you that way. If I just don't know what to tell. That's football. It's football, folks.
Here's the reality. If you are facing NDSU, and because I've watched this, I've been around it, watched this, been a part of the rivalry, watched NDSU, SDSU, the Valley, everything for years and years and years. If NDSU fans are not calling your program dirty, your players dirty, they don't see you as an actual threat to beat them. Because before it was SDSU, it was how dirty UNI was. And now they don't say that anymore because, UNI sucks. And then it was James Madison, and look at all these cheap shots. It's just part of it. They're very, very good at at their screenshot outrage, and it's fine. I mean, they literally do it every game. Their Bison Illustrated puts out a set of clips every game of complaining about officials. They just do it all the time.
The funny thing
and
was
that's fine.
The bald guy. I shouldn't necessarily use that because that's kind of mean to say that. The bald dude. I remember. I think I saw a comedy like
Swanson.
Whatever. Yeah, he's like, the eye in the sky doesn't lie, and literally the shot was on the sideline. I'm like, dude, you're gonna say the eye in the sky? You do the overhead. That's what the eye in the sky means, because the sideline view is literally the one that you can't tell shit from. Eye in the sky means overhead. But he's kind of an idiot anyway, so I guess that's not a surprise. But yeah, I mean, it was just those. I'm surprised that blew up into what it was. I know there's always that. I know people are still in their feels about Christian Roseboom up there and a hit he put on him. I mean, again, he was a freshman in 2016. I made this point. The only point I made to somebody that I kind of got upset with about. I showed that clip as well from the USD game this year where I don't know who their kid was. He the one where he takes the shot at AJ Coons after they score the go-ahead touchdown and then flops on the ground. This was, USD scores a winning touchdown. And then the NDSU guy takes a cheap shot on AJ Coons, and then he flops and pretends that he got, just murdered. And I just said, my point was right, because the NDSU 18 to 23-year-olds are so much more mature and well-behaved than the ones at SDSU or anywhere else. And then I put that clip of video. They're 18 to 23. Stop treating them like they're pros. They make mistakes. I mean, that's part of it. This is, again, common with fan bases. Well, and in this part of the country, we treat our teams like the pro teams. But they're going to make mistakes, guys. Just get over it.
Fans is short for fanatic for a reason. And I used to argue that stuff all the time back. And it's just after a while, it's like, oh, what am I arguing? You're not going to change anybody's mind, right?
Nope.
Like I can point out that in Christian, the infamous Roseboom incident, right? He hits the guy, slides down to his ankle, only has him by an ankle, and he's wearing a helmet. If you've ever played football and are wearing a helmet, you can't see up. You can't really see peripheral real well. So you got a guy by the ankles. There's a bunch of stuff going on. He's starting to pull away from your arm. Is he supposed to let him go and let him run? Another guy got there. He can't see that. He's on the ground. So he tried to roll and take it and bring him to the ground. And you know what? I would never do that. You know why? I physically can't. I'm not athletic enough to do that. So,
I mean, I saw incidents in the NFL this week where guys were getting their knees twisted on the ground. I'm
it's a rivalry. It is what it is, and that's okay.
Oh, and I've heard, I've also heard, we used to cut up 5-minute tapes of them taking cheap shots, and I'm like, I responded to the guy, I'm like, I hate to tell you this, man, but if you know basic editing and you have a couple years worth of tape, you can pretty much make any kind of low light reel, cheap shot reel you want, because it's not, that's just a little secret. It's not that hard. I mean, you see the highlight videos I make in 1 minute. If somebody has 5 years worth of video of game tape, and you're talking 15 games, 12 games, whatever, not that hard to cut up a reel that makes the team either look like the dirtiest team in the history of football or the worst. I could go grab a reel of just the 3 or 4 NDSU losses and put a 5-minute tape together, and you'd think NDSU lowlights, and you'd think they're the worst program ever. That's just basic editing with video. I mean, it's the same thing with screenshotting, where you show the shot of him, getting pummeled out of bounds, but you don't show the shot where the contact initiated, or you're not showing the overhead. Editing can be massaged. I know plenty of programs that have done this. So none of this stuff is new under the sun. It's just, but it's also part of what makes this fun. It's a rivalry. It's this
a rivalry. Stuff. That's what it is.
My one thing that I do take a little exception to is just kind of bear in mind you are talking about 18 to 23-year-old kids, and be careful. Like I mentioned the NDSU kid. I've never looked up his number. I've never looked up his name. I'm not going to call him out. He made a mistake. I hope that's not in his character. I hope they addressed it. It's not my business. I was on the sideline 2 hours beforehand, before the NDSU SDSU game. Somebody from NDSU came up and started like a pretty verbal spat with the SDSU people as they were warming up without pads. My camera caught it, and it's there's language that you would not want said to your kids, but it's one of those things like I wouldn't have identified him or something. It's like they're kids. These are, some of them are kids, some of them are young adults. They're going to be, they're maturing. You shouldn't. Shall we talk about Colorado State? No. I don't know why I saw that right now.
So,
Let's not talk about CSU.
I want to address Shane here, asking how fast will the hiring process be? My understanding, extremely fast is the goal. With all the coaching staff leaving and everything,
players in the portal,
they want to get it done
go quick
now.
Recruits.
Yeah, it's not weeks is not the goal. It's quick. And let's be honest, when you have the caliber of potential replacements out there that we went over last night, you got Dan Jackson, you got Zach Lujan, you got even Christian Smith over at Northwest. I mean, the list is huge of potential replacements who have been a part of this program, which I've said over and over and over. I got to ping on Tanner Castora because this is kind of his jam, and have him figure out the Coach Stig coaching tree to see how really deep it is. I mean, because if you think Vanderbilt, Tennessee, Wake Forest, New Mexico State, all over. I mean, Coach Stig's fingerprints are all over the game of college football, and it's crazy. You have a huge, deep pool. Justin Sell is a very, very, very sharp athletic director who's been incredibly good at making hires. He's got his guys that he wants already. I promise you he does.
He always says he has a list for the other sports, and I have no reason to think it would be different for football. He's always said he has a list ready to go because again, I said this with the dark humor bit. Basketball, this has happened. This isn't the first rodeo. This has happened a lot with basketball, happened with wrestling. Said he has a folder that basically he has a list ready to go of guys that right away that he knows he wants to hire. So I have no doubt he's had that list. It was pretty easy the first time with Stig because Jimmy was right there and there was really no reason to think it wasn't going to be Jimmy unless for some reason he got a whale of an offer somewhere else. It's going to be Jimmy. But again, I just think everybody knew Jimmy was not going to be here forever. Maybe it was a little sooner, but I guarantee you, I would be stunned if he did not have that list on him right now. Or he didn't have that list on him Friday, and he's going to it, and he went to it. So he's probably already working on that. They have to have it done soon. That is the key. I mean, you're going to have guys in the portal. You've got to maintain. This can't be a long-term thing, or then you do risk losing a lot of people. I know we talked about the collective stuff too. There's JFP says that's going to be up and running by the start, rerunning, I guess, by the start of the new year. So yeah, I think.
On Kevin's question, I don't think anybody who is not connected to Stig, and we said this last night, I don't think you go outside of the Stig tree unless everybody said no because of what Stig built and how recent it was. If you're 10 years down the road, then I think you're all over, whatever. But I think you try to stick with that culture and continuing that culture just because of the roster you have and keeping guys. They came because of that culture that Stig started and Jimmy continued. You hear it in every interview with these guys, either when they sign or when they're talking to Mark or they're talking to Adam Bach or any of these guys who stuck around after tampering and everything else. It's the family atmosphere, the culture, yada, yada, yada. And I'm not saying that that other coaches don't have that or don't bring that in, but it would be different. And I can tell you, I know it would be different because guys are sticking around in Brookings, South Dakota, a town of 22,000 people, and staying because of that atmosphere. And they're leaving very arguably more interesting towns, more interesting areas, wealthier schools all the time, despite those coaches' best, because every coach wants to have a culture, right? They want to have a family culture. They care about their well, not every coach cares about their players, let's be honest, but that sort of thing. You want someone who brings that with them and continues it, right? And I think it's too close unless you get past like your top 4 or 5. I'm not saying you go through like 15, 20, but you get past your top 4 or 5 before you shift gears. And with how quick this is going to happen, I don't think that happens. I don't think it's going to work out that way.
It's delicate because, I mean, and it's not necessarily these guys are going to be alums. They're just on the coaching tree, not just because, obviously not everybody who coached with Stig went to South Dakota State.
Right. We're not looking for former players or anything that specific, but someone who's been involved and understands.
They have to be realistic about the challenges of being I say that for anybody who takes a job, whether it's here at USD. You just have to be. We've talked about this when you're not in the major town, when you're not in a big population town, when you rely on a lot of people to commute. It's different than if you were in Fargo and you had 250,000 or Bozeman with 50,000. Missoula, I think, is getting close to 100 now, from what I've heard. And I said this earlier. I think whoever comes in, you have to have kind of, I want to say the blessing of Stig, but I think they have to, if it were somebody outside, they have to have a good relationship with him. I think that's got to be paramount as long as John Stiglmeyer is alive on this earth and in Brookings, South Dakota. He has got, he's the godfather. I mean, and that's the person you kind of have to lean on. You don't want to, you have to be your own person. You have to run it your own way, but you do have to kind of have you have to have that person have your back for the rest. I think for the entire community to be behind you. So, I tend to think somebody with ties is the best way to go, but somebody made a point up here and they were correct. One of the turning points for NDSU, granted this was a different period because we were talking about they were also near the Division I transition. One of the turning points for NDSU was when they chose to hire Craig Bowl instead of Gus Bradley, who had been the biased guy in that program. I mean,
not the same situation.
I agree.
That's different. That's so different.
I do think you just have to hire you do have to hire the best guy.
You have to hire the best guy.
That would be the preference. I mean, if he doesn't have ties, if he's not on Stig's coaching tree, I think you do it. If again, you're putting your trust in Justin Schell, and he's not giving you any reason not to trust his hires. This will be his first. This is his first real football hire. Let's just be honest, because Jimmy was right there. That was a slam dunk. I mean, other than a volleyball coach or two, other than one of the volleyball coaches, I think, or two of them, has he missed on a hire? Really?
Not really.
In his time here?
In any sport? And I mean, it's hard to argue that with the state that the volleyball program was in, that any of those hires were misses because you were trying to resurrect a program that was dead. That's a whole different ball of wax.
He certainly hit on the most recent one.
Yes. I mean, it wasn't, it was not, I am dead certain that when he was making hires for the volleyball program, he wasn't having it was not the most desirable volleyball program, even in the Midwest, in the region, let alone the country, where coaches were dying to be the coach of it. That's a whole different thing.
Yeah, but I think some of the candidates I know have been tossed around. I think Jackson, to me, really, I think he's starting to bring the juice there a little bit.
What Brian says here is what makes that so different.
That's a fair point.
Is Bobich had lost the program and needed new blood. Gus was amazing, obviously making NFL head coach, but Bull was new blood and fired was needed. That a culture change.
And they were moving to Division I too.
And they were moving to Division I.
That was on the horizon.
Like, you needed a culture. You don't need or want to change the culture. You don't need to bring in a new guy to start.
Right, like I said, and every program's different. I'm not trying to paint everybody in the same box, but the main thing is if you feel like the best guy, you got to go with the best guy. If it isn't somebody who was on the tree, I think preferable. Yeah, Nick Saban. Let's get Nick Saban up here if he wants a nice, comfortable job.
Right.
You wouldn't have to worry about losing people to the transfer portal if Nick Saban was in the FCS. I'll tell you that. You have to go with the best guy. I mean, I've seen this, whether it's hiring alums or ex-coaches, it's gone both ways, and from experience, I've seen it go both ways. It can go very bad. You just have to hire whoever you think the best guy is.
And that's why I said last night, like, I hate the "we need a Michigan man" mantra garbage. But in this specific scenario, with how prolific Stig's coaching tree is, you can find the best guy. Because, I mean, there's argument to be made that the best guy, the best coach available doesn't fit. You have to fit. The best coach available, if he comes in and he runs a spread scheme and has built all of his teams off of transfers, that is not what SDSU wants, needs, or will work.
I also think, too, if they did go with somebody outside, they wouldn't do that. I think Stell is going to, if it's somebody outside the tree, he's going to bring someone in who fits pretty closely with what they want to do. You're not gonna have, especially with Justin Sell, who's been here long enough to know what the program. Like if it was a new athletic director,
then I'd be
came
nervous.
from somewhere, he might do that. I think Justin Sell knows what this program is by now because he's been here for almost the whole rise of it. He'll, if it's not a guy with ties to the program previously, he'll bring in a dude who's runs it very close or runs it by the standard that they want to. And like I said, that's where I also said, if it's not, that's why I say the person has to have a good relationship with Stiglmeyer. If it's not a person who has ties with him, I think that's one of the first key things. That's kind of inevitable. That's kind of natural everywhere. Like your point, like the Michigan man thing, that's fine. But, I think when, we mentioned Nick Saban jokingly, but Kalen DeBoer had to get on Nick Saban's good side. I'm pretty sure when Bear Bryant was alive, people had to get on Bear Bryant's. When you have a legendary coach, and Stig's the best personality. I think he's got the least ego of anybody I've ever met. So it's not like I think he's going to hate somebody and disown SDSU if he doesn't like the hire. But, the more on board you have him and the more public and out there he is about supporting that person, the more everybody's going to get on board. And that's going to be key because you're going to need that investment. This is where you also start to test the investment level of your boosters, your program, because you got to start boosting it up here, whether it's the NIL, all that stuff. This is where oh my God. Yeah. He's on Twitter. If you really want Antonio, he's an interesting follow.
So I want to address this a little bit because it keeps coming up. What's thoughts on Curtis Riggs? Everybody loves Curtis Riggs, and I'm not saying he'd be bad. I'm not saying he shouldn't be considered. My concerns with Curtis Riggs are multiple. He hasn't coached college ball in a long time. He does have a lot of connections to the community, but he feels like a local celebrity hire to me because everybody in South Dakota knows Curtis Riggs. He's friends with Mike Zimmer, John Gaskins. Those guys all know him. He calls games with those guys. Or Matt Zimmer, sorry. But sorry, Zim. Sorry, Zim. But and I'm not saying he'd be a bad coach or anything. It just feels celebrity hire-ish to me, and I loathe celebrity hires. I can't stand them.
I understand that.
So that's my hesitation because I've never seen Curtis Rigg coach. I've never seen any of his coaching. I mean, he was Sioux Falls Storm forever, and I never watched him. And I'm not putting stock in. Well, he knows Kalen DeBoer, and he's part of Kalen DeBoer's coaching tree. I'm not putting stock into that when the guy was an arena coach for 20 years. Not saying he doesn't know ball. Like, obviously he does. I love him on broadcasts and things like that. He knows ball really well, and he knows the local area. I am incredibly hesitant about Curtis Riggs.
Well, I mean, there's some fair points there. I think, like I said, I don't think I'm going to say Tyler's name in a minute there, Johnny. What? Just cool your jets. I don't think anybody knows football in this. I know nobody has studied more football and watches more tape than Curtis Riggs. I mean, he watches the college, the high school. I mean, other than the coaches, I literally, other than the coaches for these programs, I don't know that anybody knows the high schools or the colleges around here better than him. So I think I think he would know that part of it fine. Somebody did bring up a point of, well, how would he run a program? That's a good point, because you're not, as Jimmy has found out, and one of the things I've kind of mentioned with one of the things I kind of thought with Jimmy about, well, maybe he would just prefer to go back to being a position coach or a coordinator, is you're more the CEO. You're not really getting to coach the X's and O's. So that's a part of it that Curtis would have to deal with. And the Storm he was a great indoor coach. I think he did some assistant stuff too with USF, but that was a while ago. I think he'd be a very, and he would have frankly probably gone with Kalen had Kalen stayed at Washington. But it's just, he would have probably gotten some kind of an analyst or some kind of position there, but it's a little harder to get hired at Alabama, where they have a few more, that's my understanding. I don't want to say for certain. I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth. It's a little hard. I am surprised he's still here, because I thought, but things happen, and Alabama's a tougher place to, I mean, Kalen, that tells you how much different it is when Jimmy can take his whole staff to Washington State, but Kalen had to make concessions at Alabama. There's just different levels to this, and that's one of them. But I think he would be an intriguing, and I know I think he would have a pretty good relationship with Stig. But yeah, there'd be risks with it. I mean, there's no one I think you can say is a slam dunk. Everybody's going to have a little bit. But yeah, I think I would say one thing that would be interesting to think about, if he's interested, if it's not the head coach, I'd consider him as an offensive coordinator. I absolutely would. I think, I think again, recruiting standpoint, you're going to have to fill out a new staff here. I think he wants to get some kind of I don't know. I think his kids are pretty much out of school now. So that was a big part of it. Like I said, if he's not the head coach, I would consider, whoever comes here, I'd consider offering him a coordinator position, because I think he would be I think he'd be a really good recruiter and a really good mind. Now, I don't know how that would be the
especially
only
locally,
especially local. And somebody mentioned it too as well with retaining the players. He knows all those kids because he worked with them at those camps. Yeah, I think, but like I said, there definitely are. It would be interesting because he would have to run a program, and that's a whole. But I also think he'd be pretty good doing the glad handing stuff and the alumni stuff too, because he's pretty good in public. But now, that to me is a I guess we call it an outside the box or an outsider. I think it's got interesting, and I tell you, if he's not the head coach, I would seriously consider bringing him aboard. I really would, because whoever's doing this is going to have to start from scratch, and I think he'd be a great point to do it. Now, Tyler, I would be on. I could do that. I mean, it would be interesting. I cannot.
If you're going off tree, he's probably my favorite.
I wasn't always a big fan of the offenses they ran at times, but I know Tyler from when I covered him in Fargo. He's a good dude. I think everything, you talk about the integrity and the values that Jimmy had. He had those at NDSU, so he's going to bring a lot of that. We talk about the rivalry between the programs, but there's a lot of the same threads in terms of culture and family that run between those programs. So Tyler would bring a lot of that. And I have no doubt that he would probably mesh with Stig. I mean, Stig probably recruited him. I don't know if that was the case or not back in the day. It would definitely spice up the marker rivalry to another level, because we all know that Rule was kind of Mr. Bison, and we thought he was going to get that. I will say, I thought, and I said this last year, I thought the Polisek hire was not just now. It's easy to say this now that everything's happening the way it is. I thought Polasek was the right hire last year because I thought Tyler needed a little more experience outside of Fargo. He hadn't really coached. He hadn't coached outside of Fargo. I think he'd done maybe one assistant. I think his only other job was like as an assistant at Moorhead High School, which is right there. So, obviously he was going to go to Tennessee State with Eddie George, but then he got the Iowa State job. So now he's been in the Big 12 with a program that nearly won the Big 12 title, won the Pop-Tarts Bowl. I'm assuming he had a good Pop-Tart last night. You would assume he recruits this region like a demon. I mean, I think that's probably the best way to put it. I mean, if there's one thing that's maybe slipped with NDSU, and it hasn't hurt him yet, it's that I don't know if they recruit in this region as well anymore. We'll see where that goes in the future. But, man, I mean, if you want to talk about just kind of keeping the train going, I think he would absolutely – yeah, that's what I meant. His only other experience outside of NDSU was he spent a little time as an assistant at Moorhead High School. I didn't mean Moorhead College. I meant Moorhead High School. But, he to me would be I think he'd be a good – now is he going to do it? But, Iowa State, he would have portal connect – he would have connections, I think, to the FBS. Mm-hmm. Maybe help you bring in some portal guys when you need to, because I think that's another key thing. That's the reason I don't know that NDSU wanted to hire him last time, is he just didn't have enough connections outside of Fargo. I think he's probably built more of them now to run a program at the Division I level. So, it would spice things up. I mean, for the marker rivalry alone, it would be fun. It would be funny. But beyond that, you have to look beyond just the hilarity, all those implications. I think if you're going to go off tree, I wouldn't have any problem with that at all.
And you know what? Here's the thing. The marker game is everything. It is. Because if you take care of business outside of the marker game, but you lose the marker game, guess what? You're on the road in the semifinals. That's what happened this year. You're on the road in the semifinals, and then it's incredibly difficult to win up there in the semifinals. That's why it matters, to avoid having to go to Fargo and finally maybe someday get them to Brookings in the playoffs. So that would be huge. I do want to address this. Shane asked on Twitter, is there fear of SDSU being a stepping stone job and being in this position again in 3 years was Jackson or Lujan, or is that a good thing because it means success? I don't care who you hire. SDSU is a stepping stone job. We are an FCS school. Everybody I don't care if we move to the Mountain West. You're a stepping stone job. Period. End of story. Unless your name is Wisconsin. The University of Wisconsin Badgers, one of the highest revenue generating athletic departments in the country, is a stepping stone job. It's just what it is. And I'm not trying to be a dick. I'm just saying that's the reality of being a mid-major program. You are
no different at no different at NDSU. Their last coaches have all gone on to. They all used it as a stepping stone. They were only there for 4 to 5 years. I think, and again, the other thing I want to make clear too: don't think that if SDSU were at the FBS, any of this would be, whether it's the portal or the head coach, none of this would change. No. They still deal with the portal defections at the Mountain West. I mean, the only places that really don't are the major conferences, and you mentioned it too. The teams in the major conferences are still dealing with this. There's only a few that are really above it, and it's the biggest brands and biggest spenders. And so, yeah, I mean that, it's just, I feel like we've been there with basketball with this before. It's like, I realize not everybody who does football follows basketball, but it's like, this is not really different sports, different dynamics. Yes. But a lot of this is the same stuff we've talked about with basketball. You're going to have when you have a good young coach, he's going to get poached. I mean, didn't mean to rhyme there, but it's probably a sign we need to wrap up here soon.
Yeah, we've probably got to head out. I spent a lot.
I got to go to work here pretty soon, and I got a few things. But yeah, I mean, it just is what it is, guys. I think I kind of, I'm leaning a little toward Dan. If I had a choice, I mean, I'd say Dan Jackson. But again, he just got the New Mexico job with Eck, defensive coordinator job. I think, Zach's right. There's maybe 5 to 8 that aren't stepping stones. And they're all dealing with portal issues right now. So
when
good luck.
Clemson and major programs are complaining about portal issues, I don't care where you go, you're going to have portal issues. And arguably, you could say it's worse in the FBS. I could make that argument. You can look at the numbers of FBS transfers. And when you're in the G5, if you're a good G5 player, your stock is higher with the programs above you, with the Miamis, with the Iowas, with all of them, than your stock is as a player at an FCS school, even if you do really well. That's just reality. It is what it is.
But I guess my bullet points as we wrap this up, I would kind of lean right now with Jackson and Eric Eisness. I think they're the most if they want it. I mean, that's because I don't know that they're making they're coordinators at the FBS level, but it's the Group of 5 level. I don't know that it's not like it's the Big Ten. I don't think the salaries are going to kill them, but are stupid high.
Right.
But they've got a lot of experience. They're on the tree. They should have connections within the FBS, which helps you again navigate the portal and all that good stuff. Those are two that right now I think would be, and I think Isis would have been Isis might have been the choice. I mean, it might have been between those two had, for whatever reason, Jimmy not taking the job 2 years ago. Right. So I think the other ones I've heard, Lujan, I think even Josh Davis was thrown out there. I think those could be choices down the road. Absolutely. They're both still pretty young, though. I mean, Jimmy is young at 35 when he got the job. I mean, I think Lujan's not that far removed from is closer from Lujan played 8 years ago, 7 years ago. I mean, he's not even 35 yet himself. So it'd be a little young, I think, for Zach. Davis, I think, is still a little young. I mean, I think he needs to marinate a little bit at Fresno and get his feet wet there. I think both those guys are absolutely candidates to be head coaches down the road somewhere, especially Davis. I mean, I can't say enough about the stuff he did from year 1 to year 2 at USD, and obviously everything he's done at SDSU. I think I've seen Christian Smith, who I saw somebody upstairs saying maybe Jimmy's looking at him for DC. And I'll say this: if Jimmy hires him for DC, then whoever comes here, I would hope makes a run at keeping Bobbitt, because I would, I don't know how. I'm sure Bobbitt and Jimmy are close, but if Bobbitt's not going to be the defensive coordinator at Washington State, I'd be like, whoever comes here, I'd be like, dude, you can continue being a defensive coordinator and running the show and proving your mettle here, and that'll get you, you do well as a defensive coordinator, you might have a little bit better position than as a another position coach, but who knows? We'll see where that goes. Right. I think those are the two best. And then, like I said, Roll, Riggs, I think there's intrigue there, but no inside knowledge. My hunch is those two are the big ones I would say right now. I keep an eye on, but you never know. We'll see where it goes.
And my very last thing, and then I'm out. Lauren mentioned earlier, or asked earlier, how many guys are going to be in the portal. We don't know. We have no idea. You can guess. It's going to be a lot initially, probably, depending on how quick the hire is. I mean, you get a new hire in tomorrow, which I would not say is out of the realm of possibility. Then maybe it's less, because the coach gets to come in, talks to the guys, talks to them, tells them what he's doing and everything else. So, beyond that, Brent, thanks for the $2 donation. Attaboy.
Never seen that here before.
From an NDSU fan. From an NDSU fan. That's awesome. Thanks, Brent. Appreciate it, buddy.
I can't say bad things against Mount Bison fans anymore. Goodness.
I know. If you run into me in Frisco, I'll buy you a beer. Appreciate that, buddy.
And hey, appreciate everybody who's been tuning into the streams this year. Whether it was
1,800 on, Twitter bots boost that number, but 1,852 live viewers on an NFL Sunday is silly. So thank you guys, everybody who's listened to us throughout the year. We sure appreciate it.
Our incoherent rants, yep, and hopefully we'll be back next year. I don't think any reason to expect we won't,
Nope.
but yep, just thanks for being with us all for the last 2 years. Obviously, we would have had a little more fun with this a year ago when we were wrapping up a Frisco National Championship, but they don't all end with titles, and it's going to be
Nope.
whatever happens, we'll be back next year, and however the games go, we will have our fun and have our incoherent ramblings and not technically produced stuff. So y'all have a good year. Say hello if you see us at the certainly if you see me out and about, say hello. I'll be shooting basketball, soccer, softball, whatever the hell there is to shoot. I'll shoot it. And yep, thanks again, guys. Really appreciate all the feedback and keep it coming. Keep coming out and supporting all the athletics out here. There are a lot of good people at SDSU, and that's not changing. So I don't think the football program is going to fall much, if at all. So I think there'll be a lot of fun next year to be had as well.
Yes, sir. All right. With that, go big, go blue, go Jacks. Go have a happy new year, everybody.
Peace.